Hello, you are tuned in this evening to the third part of Super Kami Guru Alucard's 500 favorite songs. Now, in the last two videos, we've counted down from 500 all the way to 401. Now, in this video, we will count from 400 all the way to 351. So, as we progress, we will get closer and closer to what I would consider my favorite songs of all time. And like I have stated in previous videos too, that the purpose of this isn't to say that my opinion is right. It's just to suggest certain things that I'm interested in and see what other people think, and also maybe show a few good tunes that other people haven't heard, give some recommendations. So that's all it is. And as I said, I'm Super Kami Guru Alucard, also known as Chris McKee, and here we go. We'll start right off with 400. 400 goes to the 90s hip-hop duo Showbiz and A.G. and their song Next Level in brackets Nighttime Mix. Now, the reason I picked this song is because it's a pretty funky, groovy jam, and it's overall considered a very important hip-hop staple. Now, to give you the backstory, Showbiz and A.G. were a duo. A.G. stands for Andre the Giant, and he was the MC. Showbiz was mostly the producer. Now, they had kind of like a little bit of side work with other rappers, but didn't really get a chance at a label offering them a deal until they formed a duo. Now, this song in particular comes from their album Goodfellas, which was their first real big piece of work that got recognized in the hip-hop music field. And this song in particular is a remix produced by the legendary hip-hop DJ Premier of Gangstar. So the combination of Andre the Giant's lyrics, AG, Showbiz backing the main original arrangement, and DJ Premier accompanying it and adding the scratching, it's a phenomenal combination. Definitely 400. 399 goes to the rock band Bon Jovi with their song You Give Love a Bad Name. Now, they have a lot of songs, but this one in particular seems to have resonated the most over time. It's kind of that one instantly recognized Bon Jovi song that really sets them apart. And I mean, they've been a very successful rock band for a long time now. They're actually one of the few artists that managed to crack into the diamond field of record charting, meaning they've sold over 10 million records. And, well, it's not that artists haven't done that, it's just that to do that in general is quite a big feat. Like, some artists sell a few million records, but it takes a long time in their career to achieve a diamond status. Now, with Bon Jovi, they actually had achieved diamond status very early on in their career with songs like Living on a Prayer and You Give Love a Bad Name. 398 goes to the rapper known as Old Dirty Bastard, or O.D.B. for short when they put it on the radio or music videos, and his song Shimmy Shimmy Ya. Now, a lot of people mistitle it and think it's called Give It I Like It Raw, but actually the original record title was Shimmy Shimmy Ya, which he does repeat on it. He does sing the I Like It Raw part in the beginning, but if you notice, the main chorus that he actually repeats several times throughout the song is Shimmy Shimmy Ya. Now, O.D.B. or Old Dirty Bastard had a very unique style. He was very popular, successful, and even had mainstream success rapping on songs with Mariah Carey like Fantasy. But he was often in his later career troubled with drugs and kind of always labeled an outcast, but still, that's kind of what makes him a great rapper. He was always true, original to himself, bit crazy, and unique. So that's why O.D.B. Rest in peace. You get 398. G. 397 goes to rapper, producer, and singer Timberland and his song The Way I Are. Now, originally Timberland started out as just a producer. He'd actually worked with a lot of artists like Missy Elliott, who I'm not really the biggest fan of, but he did some fantastic work too with Jay-Z on some of his earlier records, and Aaliyah too. He actually produced a lot for Aaliyah and made some fantastic instrumentation. So he was always a very high credited producer. In fact, Some people have speculated that he makes $500,000 a beat. Now, the rate could have gone up, and I'm not sure if that's actually true, but I've heard rumors. Now, what makes him such a great musician is he could do it all. He can sing. He could sing actually very nice. He's done it before. He could rap very good. I don't know if he writes his own lyrics. I don't think so. But you give him lyrics, he can rap, and his beats always bang. So Timberland, you get 397. 396 is the classic rock band Deep Purple and their song Smoke on the Water. Now, it has one of the most famous, iconic riffs of all time that everybody seems to know, that they've all heard, and they never ever really had another song become that iconic staple that everybody knows them for. But they had a lot of really good high charting songs, songs like Hush, Woman from Tokyo, Highway Star, I believe it was called. They had some fantastic songs because they were all very great instrumentation, and they had a very unique harmony together by adding the guitar, the keyboards, which they had really sound like an organ at times, and it was cool. And they are just one of those most iconic and influential songs, like is Smoke on the Water. But I really think that the group itself is the reason Smoke on the Water is such a great song. But yeah, that comes in at number 396. 395 goes to soul and funk singer James Brown and his song The Payback. Now, the reason I chose this one is it's a very significant musical piece in many regards. It's kind of a merging of a lot of different genres, which James Brown did bridge into. He's often regarded as the godfather of soul, and he kind of takes like a mafia approach with this song, which is very interesting. It's kind of like the anthem that really shows like part of James Brown's character as an artist. And there is stories of him doing some very terrible things, but if we're just looking at him from an artistic point of view, he was a very iconic and influential musician. He inspired people with songs like Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud. And of course, like the big payback is standing on your own, being strong, and, get revenge, hold your own. And for that reason, I'm like, that's a dope song too. 494 goes to Wu-Tang Clan member and rapper Method Man, featuring Mary J. Blige and his song You're All I Need. Now, this song actually won a Grammy, which was a huge feat for not only Wu-Tang Clan, but for Method Man. Like, he was really taken seriously and respected as a solo artist after that, because he was actually the first member of the group after the Clan had formed to release an album. And then Raekwon followed, GZA I think followed after that. See, the funny thing was GZA had released an album long before that. But what Method Man excelled at as a rapper, what the song showed, is he could be lyrically deep and poetic, but he had a very laid back style that was easy to grasp, that a lot of the great hip hop legends of the day actually admired about Method Man. So, and to win a Grammy with a song like You're All I Need, the beautiful Mary J. Blige singing on it, and funky production from RZA, you can't cut it any sharper than that. So that's why it falls in at 394. 393 goes to the Irish rock band the Cranberries and their song Zombie. Now, this was a political protest song because of the IRA bombings in Ireland at the time. North Ireland and Ireland were having their dispute as a country, and a lot of innocent people were getting killed, and it was kind of a protest song of theirs. And the video was actually so controversial, they banned it from MTV and a lot of circulating places at the time, because it was shocking, it was dark, it was disturbing. But yet, despite that, that song got a lot of radio play. And because of that, and other songs like I've Got You Wrapped Around My Finger, I think it was called. I might have that wrong. But there were a lot of big songs that the Cranberries had right with their debut that propelled it to be a multi-platinum. And even though they never had the duplicate success of that first album, it's because of songs like Zombie, though. It showed they were not only a great rock band, but a band with a message, and that's what Zombie proves. 392 goes to singer Beyonce featuring Jay-Z in her song Crazy in Love. Now, she has a lot of songs. This was her first big, huge hit single and like selling one, and it's very interesting because it seems like that's when her romance with Jay-Z began, and it's kind of evident in the video. And they've been together now a long time. They have 2 kids, so clearly they were crazy in love. But I consider that her best song. Overall, she's had other songs that they would probably more recognize her for nowadays and had later hits. But I say that song really defined her as the R&B diva she was. Like that, she didn't need Destiny Child, that she really could break out from the group and be like the next Diana Ross. But also, like, that song was so musically dynamic with Jay-Z's rapping being incredible, the jazzy beat. It really was just a phenomenon. I honestly don't believe she's made another song quite as good as that since. So that's why 392. 391 goes to the rock band U2 and their song Vertigo. Now, they have a lot of songs, but the reason I picked Vertigo is because that's actually the first time I had heard U2. It was back when I was listening to an old radio station and was just kind of flipping through, and I landed on this rock station. It was playing some good classic rock, and then sometimes it plays some more newer modern stuff. Now, this was actually a new song at the time I heard it, and I was like, oh, I've never actually heard U2, but I really like that song. It had a very almost psychedelic, unique vibe. And then it's funny because I've listened to other U2 songs after it, and I didn't even like any of them half as much as Vertigo. For some reason, Vertigo really stuck out with me. And there was another song they had released around that time. I think it was called It's a Beautiful Day, which also was a pretty good song. But I still gotta hand it down to Vertigo because that's the song that really seemed to impress me the most with U2 as a rock band. 390 goes to Janet Jackson and her song So Excited. Now, in my opinion, it's a very underrated piece, and it wasn't actually the biggest selling single of hers. She's had a lot of other bigger hits like Rhythm Nation and whatnot. But the reason I picked this song in particular is it features some really unique tight production from hip-hop producer Jermaine Dupri, and you don't really often see Janet Jackson in that element. It's kind of a unique combination that works really well. That transitions like the 80s R&B to the modern. And a lot of people don't even realize there's the female rapper Kaya. They use a sample of her as sort of a bridge throughout it. And it was kind of interesting to hear that old reference of that like put back into it, because it's like she appeared in the video, but she hadn't even been seen other than her one single that was sampled from for all those years. So it's just overall a very unique and kind of groovy, cool R&B piece for its time, and that's why I put it at 390. My opinion, right? 389 goes to Kim Wilde and her infamous 80s song, Kids in America. Now, the song's been covered several times, but the original new wave 80s synth pop version really does it best because it captures the vibe of what that song is all about. Kind of cheesy, but overall I say it's a nice song because it has a catchy rhythm, and I've seen that song used in certain things that I'm just like, you know what, that song totally works. Like one example I heard it as a kid was the Digimon movie as well. They used that. In fact, I think they had another band covering it called Len that did it pretty good. But when I heard that original version, I still think that that was the best take on it. And it actually is a pretty good song. It's just, it's one of those 80s pop songs that as 80s pop, it's kind of a genre left in the past often by others. But I still think it's pretty good. So, 389. 388 goes to Brad Paisley, the country singer, and his song Celebrity. Now, this was actually one of the first songs he released as a single, and he's had a lot of very well-written, good, successful songs. But Celebrity, I always found to be his funniest, his most ironic, his most accurate and true song for how everybody looks at the idea of being a celebrity. And even for a country song, it borders onto that. It could be some alternative rock because it's very broad based. He sings it very great. The video is hilarious too because you have actor Jason Alexander complaining about not getting the right coffee, and it's just all in all, he really went all out with that. In fact, I think he must be good friends with that actor because he appeared in a later song's video online, which also was pretty good. But for being the first, being the classic, that's why I gotta give that spot to Celebrity. 387 goes to singer and producer Pharrell featuring Kanye West and their song Number One. Now, the beat is banging to that. Kanye actually is rapping some pretty tight, catchy, quick, witty lyrics, and Pharrell is actually, like, for a first big number one single, he really does take it there. Like, he sings it great, the beat is great, and it showed what a talented artist he's always been. Like, he usually laid behind the boards as a producer and worked with the Neptunes for a long time, and developed sounds for artists like Noriega and Jay-Z and Snoop Dogg even. But then, Pharrell finally got his chance to shine with that one, like as a true solo artist, and I really felt that that was his best piece of work. Like, it really shows how well-rounded he was. And like I said, Kanye is equally on point. So overall, number one, it's definitely a good song for its spot. 386 goes to the very underrated Canadian singer Fefe Dobson and her song Everything. Now, this song first appeared on the soundtrack to The Perfect Score. It had a pretty cool music video, and it showed what a great singer she was. She was very unique, and like, for a woman like her to be singing that kind of music and coming out of Canada, it really was revolutionary. I think she really got overlooked because people were expecting something so much more different than what she was, but she really was a great singer. She had some very unique songs. Like, she had other songs like Take Me Away, but Everything was still her biggest hit, and it's sad that she couldn't have gone on to become more successful and have more hits, because I really felt she was such an incredibly unique and wonderful artist. Like, she added a whole new dynamic to what you would expect, an alternative rock singer the way she was to bring to the table. So it really is a great song. So Everything falls in definitely at 386. 385 goes to the California rock band Phantom Planet and their song California. Now, they were a very good band. They had a very, classic kind of rock and roll sound to an approach, but yet they made that one hit song. It was so memorable. It got used in television, theme songs, everything. And that song really took them to number one and blew them up. But here's the thing. Around the time they had done that, their original drummer, Jason Schwartzman, was in the process of leaving the group so he could pursue an acting career, which he went on to work in movies like Spun, where he actually got a lead role, and even movies with Seth Rogen and Adam Sandler called Funny People. So he did actually land an overall pretty successful career as an actor, but because of that, maybe that did help propel their image in the early days of California, but because of that, they never had equally as successful of a hit afterwards. But I still got to give California its credit. It's almost one of those timeless songs that really makes you think, shit, I want to go to California. Actually, another rap crew led by Ice Cube, oddly enough, not West Side Connection, another one that briefly existed in the 90s that was originally a production crew but then expanded into rappers as well, and they were called the Lynch Mob. Now, they had a number one hit with the Gorillas in the Mist, and it was a classic song off an album with the same title. Actually, I think the album was called the no, it was called that, or it might have been called The Planet of the Apes, something like that. But it was a Gorillas reference because they had the video. They were pretending to be gorillas, but they were dressed like warfare gorillas. So it was the irony of two gorillas, and it was kind of a jokey sort of group that Ice Cube did to kind of expand and experiment and also bring some of his homies, on the scene with their rapping skills. And they all equally hold their own with Ice Cube on that. So the Lynch Mob were definitely tight. 386 goes to the very underrated Canadian singer Phebe Dobson and her song Everything. Now, this song first appeared on the soundtrack to The Perfect Score. It had a pretty cool music video. It was a very unique song. 383 goes to a song from the Goonies soundtrack, The Goonies Are Good Enough by Cyndi Lauper, who was in her time considered the queen of pop. And considering the Goonies was such an awesome movie, like, not gonna lie, that was just one of the, like, movies as a kid, and even though it was before my time, but it was one of those that every kid grew up watching the Goonies. Like, you kind of wanted to be like those kids, go explore, find treasure, and everything about that movie was great, including this song. Because I didn't even realize that was Cyndi Lauper or what the song was called or nothing originally. I had to look it up when I got older and be like, that song they played the Goonies. That's catchy. That's like their anthem, but it's some pretty tight 80s pop. Who did that? And then when I was like, oh, they actually got the queen of 80s pop herself to do that. So I was like, wow, that's pretty epic. Like, Spielberg went all out, and yeah, that's why I gotta give it its due at 383. 382 goes to the classical composer Schubert and his song Fantasy in F minor. Now, as a classical composition, it's one of the most powerful, one of the most moving, but also one of the most difficult to play, because it's actually written as a four-part harmony, meaning you would technically need two pianists to do it. Now, what I always find amazing when pianists write that out is they're all imagining that in their head. Like, especially a lot of these classical composers, when they would write it for a symphony, they're playing it on the piano. They know how all these parts are going to sound. They're probably going to be played like an orchestra with other instruments, but they're imagining the technicalities around them as they play and compose what they're doing. And with Fantasy in F minor, it really is such a clash of beauty and darkness in such a perfect blend that's why I had to give it the 382 spot. 381 goes to underground rapper Necro and his song One Way or Another. Now, the beat to that is really out of this world. It's wild. It's such a clash of so many things that it just kind of blows your mind how good the instrumentation is, especially for somebody that isn't really mainstream. And his rapping, while it's equally as deadly as the instrumentation is. It's like as pretty and beautiful and melodic as the instrumentation is. It's intense, and it's like not to be trifled with. In the same sense, that's how Necro raps, but he's got a very stiff, stale quality to his voice too when he raps. It almost sounds like a corpse talking, and like that's probably why he's not considered mainstream, but he is he's quite good and very underrated as far as being a lyricist and a producer. So that's why I was like, you know what, that deserves 381. 380 goes to Japanese male pop singer TM Revolution, who was also a voice actor. He did some work in the Gundam, I believe, Seed Destiny. He was one of the characters, very briefly, but he was cool. And he actually sang a few songs for that show. And the song I picked in particular, one of my favorites, because it's very upbeat, it's fast, it's some really crazy instrumentation. It's called Ignited. So he had another song which was called Invoked, and that was the original one for the theme of Gundam Seed. But when he came back with Gundam Seed Destiny and he actually got to play a character, in the music video he dresses like one of the Gundam pilots for Ignited. So it's a very wild video. He's hunting down all these Grim Reapers. The song is intense. He's singing it intense, very powerful, almost operatic at times, very epic. And just overall, Ignited is ballin'. So yeah, Japanese pop gets the 380 spot. 379 goes to the country singer legend Merle Haggard and his song Mama Tried. Now, it is his most famous song. It's that one most recognized and has a very beautiful quality to it that shows what a distinct and very deep artist he was, because he had a very personal approach that it was almost like your grandfather telling you a story kind of thing, like that close of a bond he had. He really sang a bluesy style for a country singer, I find, and the guitar playing often reflected that. It was he was very bluesy natured, but he was very good, and he is still remembered and regarded as probably one of the greatest artists of his genre for that reason, because nobody ever quite sang like him. Nobody ever quite was like him, and that's why Merle Haggard gets 379. 378 goes to Spandau Ballet and their song Gold. Now, it's one of those 80s songs that it is recognized very easily, and it's kind of got a cheesy quality, but overall, if you really look past the cheesy 80s exterior of the track and you really see the deep message of what he's singing, it's actually a really profound, kind of inspiring song. And what also makes the song great is the steel drum solo near the end. It really, you're not expecting it. It kind of gives the song almost a calypso reggae vibe that you weren't anticipating in an 80s pop song. And 80s pop songs were really great with that stuff. Like sometimes they would bring out these really unique instruments just to kind of throw in there at random times, catch the audience off guard, so it didn't always sound like 80s pop. But overall, that's why I say that this song was probably one of the best 80s pop songs for its time. So that's why I was like, you know what? That's good enough for 378. 377 goes to Ben Webster and his song Night and Day. The rendition I actually prefer most is the version where he plays on it with Art Tatum. It's incredible. I mean, Art Tatum was already a great pianist, and Ben Webster really was probably one of the first great cream of the crop tenor saxophone players and jazz musicians. It's like of his era. I mean, from the 30s on, he actually played the same saxophone always. I think it was 1938, right until his death, 1973. And in his later years, he moved to Europe, and when he died, he left like instructions like never play this saxophone again. They actually took it and put it on display in a museum there, and they preserved a lot of his like private recordings and memorabilia as like part of jazz history. He was actually very well respected in Europe, and it's because he was such a legend in his prime with songs like Night and Day that's why everybody remembers him as one of the greats now. 376 goes to the rapper that Diddy had signed originally, Shine, featuring Barrington Levy and their song Bad Boys for Life. He also had a few other songs like That's Gangsta, and he was actually a very good, well respected and pretty lyrically tight, unique rapper, but he actually went to prison for a shootout which Diddy was involved in. J-Lo was there, and he kind of took all the heat. Diddy kind of threw him under the bus, and that's why he's often overlooked, but he really was probably one of the best new and up and coming rappers of his time. I mean, a lot of people actually considered that he was going to succeed Biggie on the throne as like the new East Coast King at points. They had speculated it, and it's because of the big hits like Bad Boys and That's Gangster that he held his own. He proved he was a real MC, and it's a shame he couldn't have gotten more credit because of the legal issues. But nonetheless, 376. 375 goes to former NSYNC member Justin Timberlake and probably his funkiest, grooviest jam, Rock Your Body, which oddly enough was produced by Pharrell, who we mentioned earlier in this list. And overall, it features some cool beatboxing at the end. It's got a really like funky, almost 70s kind of pop beat to it, and it's definitely something that shows, what, as much as Justin Timberlake gets kind of hated on as being that cheap cheesy pop boy of NSYNC, like trying to transition to R&B and hip hop, he actually made the leap quite successfully. And if you really look at it, as much as they knock him and they hate on him for his boy band roots, it's like the reality is he was the only artist to really ever have a successful solo career after the end of that era. So gotta respect the man and give him props for that. Also, he's branched out into acting and done well with that. So overall, I give him his due. 375. Number 374 goes to the American rock band Mr. Big and their song Shine. Now, this song is very inspiring, it's very beautiful. It was their biggest hit, it's very well known. It's been used in, well, everything shows, anime, and it's really great because they were actually a band that was signed to a Japanese record label. Like, they were under the Japan division of Sony Records, and when they actually made that, they were very popular in Japan, um, just as popular there as we'll say North America. In fact, it seems like in the later years, after Shine, when their popularity kind of waned in North America, it seems like they were still popular in Japan and they continued to perform. Right up until the point that their drummer felt too ill to actually perform live shows. And he still performs in the studio with them. Um, but he doesn't tour, and they have a different drummer if they do tour, and I think that's the reason they've broken up for a while now. 373 goes to Sir Rod Stewart and his song Young Turks. Now, the odd thing about that is a very well respected love song in sort of all aspects. It kind of separates a lot of other pop songs from Rod Stewart, and it sort of has its own distinct hard rock quality to it that really makes it a masterpiece. Now, what's cool about that, and like many other songs in this list, that song I first heard when I was playing Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. And I remember too, every time it used to come on the classic rock station, I'd be singing along to it, Young Hearts Be Free Tonight. So it's just one of those really awesome songs. It tells a story, it gets you pumped, and makes you want to go on an adventure. So definitely 373. At 372, we have the alternative rap group Arrested Development and their song Tennessee. Now, this is considered to be one of the greatest hip hop songs of all time because of the beat, because of the story they tell, because of the overall musical quality and the impact it had on changing rap and exploring different sort of subgenres as well as different elements and ways of portraying the music. Now, Arrested Development were a very clean group. They weren't like a lot of the gangster rappers in that era. They were very well respected. They won a Grammy for their debut album, and they were always, I'd say, set apart from a lot of the other rappers in the 90s. Not that they weren't equally good, but they were often like kind of outcast and forgotten after the success of their first album because a lot of newer rap was taken over. 371 goes to singer John Wayne, Jon Wayne, not like the actor John Wayne. It's actually an alter ego he used to record a country album, and the song I picked is Texas Funerals. Now, for kind of a joke, spoofy country song, it actually has a very catchy melody. It actually has one of those songs that you could just throw on if you were drinking whiskey on, like, a Saturday afternoon, and it would make sense. Now, I first heard this song in a Robert Rodriguez movie From Dusk Till Dawn, written by Quentin Tarantino, and it was actually Tarantino's idea to use that song in the film. He actually had to find the guy, ask for the rights. It was tricky to get all that because it was very obscure at that point. But the song became more popular as a result, like the cult film usage. But yeah, it's just a very funny take. It really does make you think. If John Wayne sang country, that's how it would sound. 370 is rapper Pras of the Fugees formerly, featuring Maya and O.D.B. and his song Ghetto Superstar. Now, what made this song a #1 smash and everybody seemed to like, it just had that catchy, memorable melody, the way Maya sang the chorus, and then you had fantastic verses from Pras, which showed he really was an underrated rapper, and sadly never had the success outside the Fugees other than that song. And O.D.B, of course, he was great. So the combination of all these elements really made it that classic 90s rap staple. And like I said, the biggest disappointment of that song is just that it showed how good Pras was, but he never had the successful solo career the way Wyclef Jean or Lauryn Hill did, and even O.D.B was more successful as a solo artist, and the same with Maya. So that's the only downfall of that. But otherwise, still 370. It's cool. 369 goes to singer Jack Johnson and his song Upside Down, which is most known for being in the Curious George soundtrack. And what makes it a great song is it really captures the complexity of life, about sometimes things seeming upside down or looking for things that can't be found and not making a lot of sense. And it's got a very beautiful melody to it. The way he sings to it and plays the guitar, it's very very pretty sounding. But it's a great song because it seems like even though it's a song written for like a kids movie, I mean there actually is some deep, profound depth to the lyrics of what he's singing. And plus, like, with the way it sounds so nice, obviously, the kids are just going to hear it and think it sounds pretty, which it does. But even the adults, they could sit there and hear that and think, that's actually some deep, profound lyrics. So, yeah, that's why overall I gave that the 369 spot. Well, 368 goes to the singer Meatloaf and his song 2 out of 3 Ain't Bad. Now, Meatloaf was a very powerful singer. He had a very powerful, almost operatic, vast range. And he had successful records like Bad Out of Hell, and he was even in the movie version of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. So he was quite a successful entertainer in his own right and sort of all regards and aspects. But a lot of things that are overlooked was just how good he could sing. And I mean, a song like 2 out of 3, it really shows not only he had some deep lyrics, a real message, and it's kind of like, a very melancholy song, but damn, he had a powerful hell of a voice that very few artists in his time and even now could touch. So that's why I was like, you know what? That definitely deserves the 368 spot. 367 is jazz singer Jimmy Scott and his song Sycamore Trees, which appears on the Twin Peaks soundtrack. And it was actually used in the original final episode of the series, which had him performing the song in the other side of the curtain when they entered the other world. I don't want to give away any plot spoilers. But what was cool about him performing that song is that was actually one of the few times, as long as he had been a singer, as successful and well known and respected as he had been in the jazz community, he had a lot of really high selling records. They didn't pay him much. And he suffered with disorders that cost a lot of money to give him hormone treatments for a lot of his life. So he had a very hard life, and you hear the pain in that voice. And he had a very distinct voice, which they say it had the most haunting quality that nobody else could duplicate. And it's very true. That's why they asked him to sing Sycamore Trees. And it really is a prime example of him reaching the height of his life, very late in life, and that it's never too late. Number 366 goes to Electric Light Orchestra, aka ELO, and their song Don't Bring Me Down. Now, this is that classic rock anthem that they're most known for. They had a few other hits, but this one's been used in commercials. It's been used all over the place. It's got a very simple message of kind of trying to have pride in yourself and not let somebody put you down. And it's got a hard rock groove or nice riff, and it's got some really great, catchy synthesizer work that just take it to a new level. And that truly is why they are called like the Electric Light Orchestra. Like, you hear that music, and it's very reflective of their sound. But yeah, overall, I just love that song because of the idea, like, people raining on your parade, it gets annoying sometimes. So you kind of feel that spirit in your soul, like, don't bring me down, So yeah, that's why it's 366. 365 goes to Rie Tanaka with her song Shizuka no Yoru ni. This song is actually in the Gundam Seed soundtrack as well, like TM Revolution, which I mentioned earlier. And it's sung by the voice actress who plays Blackest Climb, which is actually Rie Tanaka. She's a voice actress and a Japanese pop singer, and she sings this song throughout the show, which it always stuck in my head, and I think that's why it's so memorable, and I love it. It's a very beautiful, catchy melody about a quiet night of peace, and it really captures like the idea how you imagine heaven would sound, or a perfect world if such a thing could exist. And I really love the song and the way she sings it in very tense moments of the show to kind of bring calm to the darkness. It's just very beautiful. It's a song that will forever touch my heart, and that's why it's 365. 364 is Bobby Blue Bland with him and his band song Ain't No Love in the Heart of the City. Now, this song is regarded as that classic, influential 70s soul song. He was very successful for it. He had other hits, but this was the big one he was known for. And oddly enough, it was used in a soundtrack of the Samuel L. Jackson movie Shaft, and Jay-Z later sampled it with Kanye West production on the beat for the song Ain't No Love in the Heart of the City, named after. And it's a great song because it really has a soulful quality, and the way you hear the flutes and you hear the melody sort of build up to what he's singing is he's basically singing about the poverty in the city, like growing up in the ghettos but holding your head held high because even without love, gotta make something of yourself, and that's important. 363 is the Diggable Planets with their song Cool Like That. That classic jazz hip hop anthem of the 90s, where they really did infuse the sounds of jazz on such an incredible level with the hip hop. And they were, like Arrested Development, which I mentioned earlier, considered what they called alternative hip hop. Not really the mainstream, but kind of accepted in some regards by mainstream masses for their lack of cursing and drug references and gang like sort of affiliations, right? So people like the Diggable Planets were a very respected like household rap group that could be accepted everywhere because they were just rapping and singing about being cool and having a funky, jazzy, fresh jam. So you couldn't really argue with that. And for being so true to themselves and creating a whole new vibe and an awesome jazzy sound, definitely have to give them the 363 spot. 362 goes to the rapper Gucci Mane with his song My Kitchen. Now, he has a lot more bigger, more successful songs, but this song was actually more of his underground work when he was still starting out and he was kind of living the life of a drug dealer on the streets. And you feel that. You watch the movie, the music video is like a movie, I should say. And it's funny too, almost, because you see him living that life, and the way he's rapping, the way he's just in that video doing this thing, you could see he's living that life, and he don't want nobody to mess with his kitchen. And you know what? It's funny because you look at it as a drug dealer doesn't want somebody to mess with his kitchen, and neither would a chef, because a chef would get mad. Hey, you're messing with all my sharp knives, all my special ingredients, right? So don't mess with my kitchen. Nobody goes in my kitchen. So it's very funny. And for that reason, I just overall dig the song. And I'm like, you know what? That's my favorite Gucci Mane jam. Yeah. 361 goes to the Canadian alternative rock slash reggae group, also a bit of ska, called Bedouin Sound Clash, and their song Shelter. Now, they had more successful hit songs, and they're kind of regarded as a one-hit wonder because their first song was actually their biggest. Shelter was not as successful, and yet I overall felt that it captured the reggae sound that the band was going for. In some ways, I love that song more. The video is really cool because it looks like it takes place in some beautiful exotic botanical garden, and the band's just rocking out, and it almost looks like it could be like a Caribbean band just jamming out in the Caribbean. But you know, it's very cool and it has a very distinct sound, and I actually love Shelter more than When the Night Feels My Song, the big one, because Shelter definitely has a more mellow, relaxed reggae vibe, and it's just a song about having a place where you feel comfortable. 360 goes to Wham, fronted by George Michael. They were a band in the 80s, and their song Careless Whisper. Now, what I love about the song is, yeah, a lot of that would be considered cheesy 80s pop because of the whole George Michael thing, but this song was spectacular and original because of like the saxophone they used on it. They have some really beautiful saxophone harmonizing. Plus, if you really listen to the story of what George Michael is singing about, like, you know, Guilty Feet not having no rhythm, and it's actually a really intense kind of a hardcore song of like betrayal in that sense, like if you actually realize what he's singing about. And like I said, there is sort of that really powerful blues feel to it, which the saxophone just embodies and like accentuates and hypes up that much more, that really makes it almost like a jazzy blues song just as much as an 80s pop song. So it's great, you know. 359 goes to another Canadian rock band, The Trues, with their song Poor Old Broken Hearted Me. Now, it is their biggest hit. It is the song they are most successful for. And I like a lot of their songs. I like a lot of their stuff when they first started out, even dating far back to when they first appeared on Radio Free Roscoe and had songs on the soundtrack. But this song was their biggest hit. It really is the anthem, and it's kind of that one song that everybody kind of has to give the Trues credit for, which I love, and it makes me proud and happy because I'm like, finally, that is one kind of band up there that I really love that made it outside of Canada and actually had serious mainstream success, because that doesn't happen often. I mean, you have the occasional bands like Nickelback and Theory of a Deadman, but the Trues really were one of my favorite underground bands, indie bands, and they managed to really make it big with Poor Old Broken Hearted Me. So, yeah, that's why it's high up on the list. They're pretty awesome. Check them out. 358 goes to the incredibly timeless Aha and their song Take On Me, which had the very incredibly well animated 80s music video that everybody remembers. And oddly enough, the director of that went on to direct the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But yeah, everybody remembers, like, you know, the girl who's lonely sitting there reading the comics, and she gets pulled into the comic and it's his own world, and then people in the world trying to fight against them, and they always focus so much on the video that they forget the actual song was a classic. I mean, they were a European band and they had a very distinct sound, and their complex harmony and their riff on that keyboard speaks more volume than the lyrics themselves. But if you really sit there and listen to the male singer's vocals, he was an incredibly high range singer, and that is honestly the European opera influence. And you really pay attention, you hear that. It's incredible. 357 goes to 90s rapper Coolio and his song Gangsta's Paradise, which was featured in the soundtrack for Dangerous Minds with Michelle Pfeiffer. And a lot of people consider Coolio a one-hit wonder, but he had actually done other songs long before that. He had actually worked with such rappers as Tupac, and Gangsta's Paradise was the big mainstream single that he had gotten out, but he had songs before that. It's just after Gangsta's Paradise came out, it kind of eclipsed everything he had before and after. And it's sad because he was really serious about what he believed in, and you feel that in the lyrics. Like, to him it wasn't a joke, but because Weird Al parodied it with his own version of Amish Paradise, it pissed off Coolio. He didn't want him to do that. It kind of made his song look like a joke, and everybody discredited him after. So I feel like even though Weird Al himself apologized, it was not his intention. They did kind of shortchange him for it, and it's sad. 356 goes to the legendary trumpeter and producer Quincy Jones and the theme for Ironside. Now, you listen to the opening riff of that. Everybody knows it. Bum, 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 bum. And then, which has actually been sampled in hip hop more times than I can count. It's actually insane. But what makes that instrumental piece such a jam is it shows not only what a great trumpeter and producer and musician Quincy Jones was, but also what a great composer he was. It wasn't just the synthesizers and the crazy effects. He overall created a rich composition that it's like to just use the short intro to the show would not do it justice. You really are better off to sit there and listen to the whole record because then you could really see how he takes his time and he really gives you a solid gem as a composer. 355 goes to the White Stripes and their song Blue Orchid. Now, they have other songs, and I do really like their earlier work the best. Songs like Seven Nation Army were quite good too. But Blue Orchid is actually the first song I ever heard by them. In fact, I didn't even know what song it was. I heard it in a commercial for Much Music, and I'm like, what is that song? And I was like, and then eventually I stumbled upon it. And I didn't even know what the song was titled. I knew who it was. I was just like, oh, it's the White Stripes. So I was like, okay, what song? What song? It took me forever to find it. And it was a journey. But then when I found it, I was like, ah, yes. And then I finally actually got to listen to it. And really, overall, it wasn't the biggest hit. It probably was one of their least successful hits. But the guitar riff, the way it kind of builds in intensity and fades out constantly in between with Megs playing on the drums and Jack's riffs on the guitar. It really is, in my opinion, one of their most unique pieces. 354 goes to the Bee Gees and their classic, which was used in the movie Saturday Night Fever, and it was called Staying Alive. Now, everybody knows that funky upbeat riff. And you know what? The Bee Gees are often looked at probably one of the cheesiest pop groups of their era, but they really had a lot of musical talent as far as the way they would build and layer these harmonies, not just instrumentally, which you hear with the bass, you hear that it's really bumping and those synthesizers complementing it on top, but the way the Gibbs brothers would stack their harmonies. I mean, they were like really serious about that, and it really, I'd say this, it almost it borders into R&B, it borders into what they call disco and pop music, but even like there's almost screaming vocals like rock, and it really is a quite a mix of all the music of that era, and it's wonderful. 353 is the old school rap crew Public Enemy and their song Bring the Noise. Now, I chose Bring the Noise because it really has one of the most empowering sort of vibes to it. I mean, it was such a great song that even the rock band Anthrax loved it so much they recorded their own remix with it, where Anthrax accompanied while Chuck D and the crew rapped over it. And I like both versions, but I will even go back and say that the original is Do It's Just Cut because it really does have a powerful message of standing strong on your own, believing in yourself, and if people are going to challenge you, then you bring the noise right to their face and just come back that much stronger, that much louder, that much harder. And, Public Enemy are really one of the classic rap groups that started it all. Without them, we wouldn't have any of the artists we have nowadays as far as rappers. 352, the penultimate of our countdown this evening, is the great jazz queen herself, Nina Simone, and I Put a Spell on You. Now, this song is actually such an incredibly mystic and mysterious and unique song, not only for Nina Simone, but just as a song in general, because I'm not the biggest Marilyn Manson fan, but I've heard him cover it, and he actually did a good song with this, because it's a very wide range kind of a sounding song. Like, it sounds like it's otherworldly in lyrics, so depending on how you build and stack the melodies around it, which Nina Simone's version does incredible, you really get a supernatural, otherworldly vibe. And the reason I chose Nina Simone's version is because it shows what a great vocalist she was. She really was, as they say, from another planet in some ways, and just incredible. So that's definitely one I recommend to check out too if you've never heard. Last but not least for this evening, we have 351, which we'll end our program after. And that, of course, is Quiet Riot, 80s rock group, and their song Come On Feel the Noise. Now, they never had another song that were as big, but they had an album. It was pretty successful. And this song is kind of regarded as one of the greatest 80s rock songs of its time. But what I really love about it in particular, and this is just my personal preference, I love sort of the way the drums back off during sort of the call and response between the band. I mean, what you hear with their sort of call and response really is the whole epitome of like a Quiet Riot, sort of a band joining together and harmonizing their own lyrics, but it really reminds me of almost that old school jazz and jump blues era. So the way Quiet Riot takes the traditions and blends it into the modern of the 80s is really just incredible, and that's why I decided to make it this spot, 351. Well, that concludes our countdown for this evening. um I will continue the next program either tomorrow or the day after. Just so much going on recording a new album right now, a jazz album actually, with the whole band. It's been exciting. But because of that, there's just been a lot on my plate. I am slowly trying to count down all of these, and it is a lot of counting down, which is why I don't want to just shove all 500 into one video or nothing. That'd be kind of crazy. I don't expect anybody to sit there for 10 hours and hear my thoughts. But, if you check out a little bit here and there, and you can always just listen to a little bit and read the list if you're curious. Hopefully, you people, whoever's watching too, you'll discover like new music and you'll share your thoughts, give your opinions, as long as they're constructive criticism, not being a hater. I welcome all comments. Please give your thoughts. Like, if you really like a song, say you really like a song. If you don't like a song, keep it to yourself. As the old saying goes, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say nothing at all. In that case, with YouTube videos, people really should follow that advice. But hope you had a wonderful time, that, learned about some cool songs, and that you'll stay tuned for the next 50 will countdown, which will take us all the way to the 200s. So stay tuned. Peace, good night. Super Kami Guru Alucard out. Oyasumi Nasai.